So, yeah. I was debating whether I should talk about this straight away or a little bit later on, as I'm kind of unsure where I stand currently with animated movie Rumours. But just recently, some news has just come out about one of Pixar's upcoming original projects, which just might be about ducks. It's a musical, of all things, about ducks. Now, I'm a little hesitant to know if this news is even true. I'll get to where the sources of this information come from in a bit. But first, let's talk about the idea as a whole. Because yes, the studio who's always vowed to not do musicals is doing one now, suddenly. Kind of out of left field, you know? And even more so than that, you know Illumination's Duck movie just released, right? Like, I get that Migration wasn't even a musical, so it's kind of different, but there's a lot of overlap here that you can probably imagine was just an unhappy accident. Although the overlap's not even that they're releasing at the same time, this is just a murmur that it exists after the other one's already released, you know? Still, that is the report that's going around anyway. And apparently even further to that, in classic Pixar fashion of just sticking to a singular word for their titles, this project is said to literally just be called Ducks. So, just like Cars, we'll have to terminally refer to it as Pixar's Ducks to avoid confusion. Can't wait. I mean, as long as it's not set in a world where every conceivable thing is duck-related, I'm probably good with that. Though it probably would still make more sense than the Cars-iverse, so let's be honest there. Like, at least ducks have a pre-established biology we can buy around. Now, upon hearing this news, I'm of two opinions. On the one hand, it's nice to see, obviously, Pixar doing something original. It's not another one of their millions of sequels, and the fact that they're breaching into musical territory could be really interesting. Why not break away from your lane and push the boundaries of your own branding a little bit? That's nice. On the other hand, I'm not too convinced on the idea of a duck movie. I kind of had these same complaints whenever I talked about Illumination's Migration, which, to be fair, is doing decently by the numbers at this point, but I just don't see how ducks are a very compelling character design to bounce off of, you know? I think Migration might be the most successful duck movie I've heard of. All of them just kind of flop, you know? But maybe that's exactly why Pixar is taking it up as a challenge. Potentially. Now, the guess around this rumor is that this will release around 2027, following on from Pixar's upcoming slate of Inside Out 2, Elio, and Toy Story 5. You know, the classics that we know about so far, and are mostly sequels anyway. Now, to be fair, one of the first things you could probably take away from this rumor is the fact that there are indeed original movies planned by Pixar, which is better than we could have hoped after that age-old Disney earnings meeting call from a couple weeks back. And whilst Inside Out's shaping up to be their first box office W for a while, and they've proven time and time again that they can still make good Toy Story movies, just with slightly diminishing returns as they go on, it'll never be lost on us that their golden age came with a string of completely original ideas. That's what the Pixar magic really is. Weirdly bookended between Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3, they definitely scored their biggest home run during this session. Though here comes the bit where I'm obliged to acknowledge the fact that the first Cars movie was also in the middle of that range. And for a reason we'll get into, maybe the subject matter will invite a little bit of that magic back. Because you see, there's two very interesting elements of this. As we've already mentioned a little bit briefly earlier on as a topic, Illumination's already done this to a certain extent. They've done a big major animated duck movie. Are we really gonna forget about it 3 years later? I mean, maybe that's enough time. But even still, is it really in Pixar's best interest? The studio that used to be the driving force pushing the animation industry's boundaries forwards to now be following in the success of Illumination. It's not even to a point of, I assume it's halfway done, and now they're too far gone to not do it anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if it's still only pre-production. The early days, you know? There's plenty of time to about turn, and they probably knew about Illumination's movie way earlier as well. So the fact that they're still on this path is worrisome, unless they think they've got a brilliant idea they can't release. Of course, if Pixar is choosing to follow in Illumination Studios' footsteps, it also makes a lot of sense. They are incredibly financially successful. I mean, even with Migration as an example, that's a flop, I think, by Illumination standard, but that's still quietly getting $250 million. Considering Pixar movies are the type of animation movies that are the highest budgeted animation movies of the times right now, and the profits aren't keeping up with it, I can understand why maybe there's a change in direction from here. And of course, Pixar has always been known to lead with their standout original ideas. Even their weaker movies like Onwards, a fantasy world that has developed into a modern 21st century setting like our world's a fascinating original idea. I mean, it's a shame the story was kind of naff until the very final twist, but yeah. And even in the early days with the old Bugs Life and Ants controversy thing, alongside a cynical DreamWorks, or I guess more accurately, a cynical Jeffrey Katzenberg after getting fired from Disney, they copied Pixar in that case, and Pixar didn't copy them back, you know? A movie about ducks isn't just already trodden ground by migration, but animated movies about birds have historically been done before, and oftentimes to middling results in a financial bleh. I think the most successful examples would probably be both Rio movies, which made almost $500 million each, and Chicken Run being the most successful stop-motion movie of all time. But even then, they're not ducks, you know? They're weirdly bipedal chickens with arms, not wings, and a parrot-y guy. But then the next tier down to, I guess, these kind of bird movies, and you come to Migration, Storks, Freebirds, Spies in Disguise, Valiant. Yeah, remember that one? The weird World War II pigeon movie? I don't know about you, but there just seems to be something inherently uninteresting when I see a movie trailer or poster with CGI animated birds fronting it. It just kind of feels boring. Is it because they're so thin as characters? And maybe that's why Chicken Run worked, because they're kind of thick around the thigh? Is that a weird theory? Like, maybe that's just me thinking with a thumbnail brain. The character's too thin and twiggly, it just looks awful on a thumbnail. It was a nightmare trying to make a thumbnail out of Wednesday Addams on the past couple Halloweens. I can't really explain it, but that's just the vibe I've gotten from those kind of movies. Hey, you made it halfway through this video, so cheers. Now, just because you might have seen a good handful of my videos doesn't mean you're necessarily subscribed, so check it down below. We'll be getting on to later why I think there's a chance this rumor isn't even real, but in the meantime, let me know your thoughts on how you think this project could go if it does exist, or whether you believe it's real in the first place. And I'll let you get back to the details of this Pixar rumor. However, I think this could invite a story which asks to go on an area of simplicity that Pixar hasn't touched in a while. With more abstract movies like Inside Out, Soul, and Elemental, it's been a while where Pixar have done a bare bones talking animal story, you know? And no, we're not counting Joe Gardner becoming a cat in Soul. I'm talking proper Finding Nemo and Bugs Life territory, you know? Pixar's such an inventive studio with its concepts and storytelling, but distilling that creativity into the limitations of those two particular projects gave us a completely different quality from them. And that's not even talking about Ratatouille. I forgot about Ratatouille. Bit more of a hybrid example, but still regarded as some of Pixar's best. Yes, the animals behaved like human characters, but the worlds otherwise had a sense of reality and believability to them. The characters were limited to the worlds of actual fish and insects that we recognize. Ratatouille doesn't work with that rendition, but, you know, there's still a limitation of the kitchen, I guess. As a kid, I could buy into this taking place just around the Great Barrier Reef. From the abandoned submarines to the East Australian current, they were so well realized and lived in, you know? And I get it, Pixar's mindset as of late has been, whilst we could animate everything realistically, what's the point when we have the freedom of any art style? However, I'd like to see projects with them with more of a tangible look every now and again. You know, with Turning Red, I really like that movie. It's a nice stylistic choice, but when the shot of that cat popped up in Toy Story 4, I was astounded. Let alone all the camera lenses, the way they recreated physical camera techniques in their cinematography, the lighting arrays, of course, and everything like that, and the editing as well that they animated into these shots. And we just have not seen Pixar absolutely go in on it like that for years now. I know that photorealism isn't exactly where the animation industry is going right now, but it's still a boundary that hasn't fully reached its limits, at least in a full theatrical film form. And that would be something I'd be very interested in seeing. At the same time, I do not need these damn ducks to look photorealistic, but it's an idea that, you know, would at least make it look different from all the other duck movies, you know? However, whilst Remy was clearly designed as an animated character, you could believe that he's a real rat in actual Paris. Luca, on the other hand, was enjoyable in that you could see cartoon characters living in a cartoon version of Italy. I'm looking forward to Elio, but the wacky alien designs just blur into that unreality from Inside Out and Elemental, you know? I don't know. I just think Pixar could do with just showcasing what they can do with a more grounded story. It's a shame Migration already exists, as I would have loved to have seen them take on that kind of concept, but can't really ask much of an art style from Illumination. They found one, and they're sticking with it. The other interesting thing that I somehow haven't actually spoken about this whole time is that this will supposedly be Pixar's first full-on musical. And I'll be honest, I am skeptical about this. So before we go any further, I do want to talk about the sources for these rumors, right? All of this information essentially comes from one singular person, That person being Daniel Richman, who is a known, legitimate, and quite consistent leaker. However, as I understand it, their track record isn't 100% correct. They're very good at predicting the dates of trailers, but sometimes they make news that doesn't actually turn out to be true, and I'm more leaning towards the chance that maybe there was murmurs at one point, but this isn't at all set in stone yet. On top of that, only a couple of articles have really picked up this story. And while it is nice to get a glance to see other perspectives, one of the main ones talking about this is an article called World of Real, which as I understand it, is not an official source of movie news, and more so just a blog post of a well-known actual official critic. I could be wrong, I'm still learning what is legitimate and what isn't, but considering its tagline is literally your place for alternative movie news, I don't know if that means it's just told from someone else's perspective, or if it's literally alternative news to fanfic about sometimes. Now, another reason I'm skeptical is, other than the fact that it's just a single, semi-consistent source, is the fact of what it's actually telling us. Pixar doing a musical. I doubt. Because you see, when Pixar started collaborating with Disney on Toy Story in the 1990s, we were in the thick of the Disney Renaissance era. Not only were Disney synonymous with animated musicals, but they were actively releasing what are still considered some of their best work. All the while, Toy Story was in production. Consequently, Pixar made the conscious decision that the movie could not be a Disney-style animated musical because they wanted to establish their own flavor. Alas, there have been no musical numbers, just the occasional Randy Newman banger song playing over the soundtrack, you know? None of the characters themselves sing, unless you count Wheezy from the end of Toy Story 2. This would then inform Pixar's entire catalogue, with all projects seemingly musical-less because their literal Big Brother funding pot is kinda handling the reins. That was, of course, until Coco, which featured the unforgettable Remember Me and a few other songs. Now, this is up for debate, but these songs revolve around the plot of the family's musical heritage, and compared to most musicals, there comparatively aren't as many songs in this movie when you weigh it against a traditional musical. Yes, it has musical numbers in it, but it's not just another Disney musical done by Pixar. It's so much its own brand and flavor. So, unless you are someone who counts Coco properly, this will really be their first stab at a full-on musical, you know, characters bursting into song and all of that. Or, you know, maybe not quite like that, we'll have to see what they want to do, but I just don't think it lines up with the agenda Pixar has. Why are ducks singing? Is there going to be a deep heritage idea for music and ducks? I don't think so. It's a Pied Piper movie. So honestly, while I think it's a nice idea, and it's clearly early days of people just wanting to somewhat mention Pixar in the news, I'm skeptical whether this thing is even real, hence why I'm a little bit delayed talking about it, because I was kind of waiting for a trailer, but perhaps considering Elio is still somewhere in the future, and we've still not even had Inside Out 2 yet, we might have a long way to wait, so I thought I'd get my thoughts out on it. The idea of a Ducks musical movie, you know, it kind of grinds against my personal preference to maybe see a more grounded Finding Nemo type movie again, but, you know, you can still tell a simple story with advanced animation whilst also including musical numbers. Maybe. Not all musicals are bright and fluffy affairs, clogged in an unreality, you know, see Les Miserables for examples like that. But in any case, if this is real, this is a bold and interesting step for Pixar on the musical front, but the duck end of things does concern me a bit. Apparently I'm just anti-ducks when it comes to movies. It's funny, ducks are like one of my favorite animals, but we've just seen that fail time and time again, and now Pixar want to do their own? It's weird. In any case, we'll await an official announcement from Pixar before speculating any further, and wait to see what they have in store with their future original projects. Hopefully it's at the very least emblematic that they are thinking of something original and different, as we're not exactly in a new golden era of Pixar right now are we? On that note, I'm gonna end it off there. My name's been Daz. Make your predictions. You think it's real or do you think it's not? And I will see you in a little bit.